All right, well, it's Lisa. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us on the Mo DDD and U webinar for November. Just real quickly, these webinars are focused on providing information on topics of interest in a quick lunch and learn style. So we really hope people will go out and grab their lunch and come back and join us for the discussions. As Kat shared, these webinars are recorded. They'll be made available on the division's website, and we will post that link in the chat so that you have that. If you're somebody that works with families and individuals, please be sure to share this information with them. If they can't watch the live event, they can always go back and pick up their recording later. So today, Kathleen Depler, Positive Supports Lead for the division, is joining the webinar, and we're going to be talking about behavior. In particular, we're going to talk about the tools of choice workshops that are available, the connections between behaviors and responses. We're going to talk a little about coercive responses and how to recognize them. We're going to touch on building and strengthening relationships, and we'll talk about positive consequences. And I just really thought this was a good topic to discuss right now because we're quickly rolling into the holiday season. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I know that when I get stressed, I have to be much more aware of the way I interact and communicate with people. And I'm also going to share that the information that Kathleen is going to talk with us about is universal, all people, and the way they interact with each other. And after I learned more about the tools of choice, I quickly realized that the skills can actually be used with anyone, with your spouse and your family members included. But before we get too far into our discussion, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I am Lisa Nothouse. I am the Supporting Families Lead at the Division of DD, and I'm also a parent. My husband and I have 2 adult daughters and 3 grandchildren. Our youngest daughter has developmental disabilities and actually receives services through the division. So we've kind of been in the system for a while. She is in her 30s, so I have a little bit of lived experience there. I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen real quick because she's got some good information to share, and 30 minutes goes pretty quick. So Kathleen, whenever you're ready, I'll let you introduce yourself and get started.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Kathleen Depler, and as Lisa mentioned, I am the Director of Positive Supports, and so I work with consultants all across the state who help folks implement positive behavior support practices. And I've myself been teaching tools of choice for almost 10 years now. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned tools of choice before I became a parent, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I also learned it before I met my husband. I'm also very grateful for that. Lisa mentioned that this is a universal strategy, and I'll go a little bit more into that a few slides from now, but this is intended to be, these are skills that work for everybody, and they improve the practitioner's life as well. I said this is the best thing that ever happened to me. It helps me on a daily basis to use these skills. So we would like to invite you to come to our full training, which is called Tools of Choice, and it's a hybrid training. So we have some information that you watch on your own time, whenever works for you, and then you come to a live practice session and work with a consultant who can help you practice the skills and give you feedback about how you're using them and how to use them to the best of your abilities. So there are 4 workshops within tools. The first one's called About Behavior and Avoid Coercion. We're going to talk about the avoid coercion stuff today because, as Lisa mentioned, it's the holidays and stress can make us be more coercive than usual. After you learn about behavior, we all get on the same page about the way that we talk about behavior and the terms that we use. We talk about some things that we're doing right now that aren't helping, like coercion. The next move we go to is called Stay Close. And that workshop is really about how do you build strong relationships? What skills do you use? And so we go pretty heavy into that in that tool, and they're very specific. These are things that you can observe for, you can get feedback because the tool has been broken down into specific steps that you use. So I can tell you if you used open-ended questions, I can tell you if you used an empathy statement, if you used encouragement. So this is really broken down into a manageable tool because the skills that you use are very specific. After you learn about how to build that strong relationship, we talk about using positive consequences and pivot, which is really how do you respond in a situation? Either you want the behavior to keep happening in the future and you'll use a positive consequence, or the behavior is something you don't want to see happen in the future and you would use the pivot tool. And then lastly, we bring it all together with set expectations. So, you've gone through a difficult time, you've had to avoid reacting to a bunch of undesirable behavior. What are you going to do so that doesn't happen in the future? Well, our set expectations tool. So you can use this QR code here and go to that page to learn more about the whole of tools. And another opportunity for you to receive some coaching. Thank you for putting the links in the chat box, Lisa. Another resource that we have are the family coaching workshops. And this is an opportunity that isn't as structured as the full tools class, but gives you portions of that. And they're typically a pretty small group of parents who get together and we talk about the skill. We do a couple of activities to really highlight how would you use that skill. And folks have the opportunity to make that connection with their peers and also with the consultants who can provide additional support. So these are some opportunities for you to learn more about the stuff we're going to talk about today. And I have these slides again at the end. So once I share with you and you're excited about this, then you can see these at the end again. So Lisa mentioned that this is a universal strategy. It is something that works for everybody. So it's really the base of the interventions. Everybody deserves to be treated in a way that's kind and caring, and that's what Tools of Choice is teaching. So these are strategies that can improve everybody's quality of life. And I wanted to tell you this for a couple of reasons. One, to encourage you that these are skills that you can use with anyone. And two, to encourage you that we're going to talk about some forms of coercion today, and you're probably using them. I am using some, we're all using some of them. We live in a coercive society, and it's just what we've learned to do. So I say this because I don't think that implementing this universal strategy is going to cause all your problems. There are things that you still might be dealing with. This is a universal strategy. So it's the basis of all those other interventions. And any other intervention that we are interested in, the other strategies, really are based in this, we're being kind and caring. And so this is where we want to start. And it's not going to solve all of your problems. Potentially, you need more solution, you need more strategies. And those might be more specific to a targeted need. And they're all based in this idea of being kind and caring and using strategies that work for everybody. So we have a fundamental fact. This is the only one I'm giving you today, but behavior is a result of the environment. And I think this is important to our conversation about coercion because we have an impact on the environment and we can change the environment by changing our behavior. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So there's some things that we're doing that aren't particularly helpful. We call them coercions. And we're going to talk about each one of these today. And I'm going to leave you with some resources about, I'm doing this, what can I do instead? So real quickly, the 10 examples of coercions are questioning, arguing, sarcasm and teasing, force, which could be verbal or physical, threats, criticism, despair, lecture and logic, taking away, and talking about bad behavior. So let's talk about what these are. Questioning, asking a question that you don't want answered. Pretty much anytime you say why, you're probably going into this questioning. Was that a good idea? What were you thinking? It's really a way that you're telling the person that the thing that happened you don't like, you don't want them to do it again. Except what we're doing when we use this is that we're focusing on the undesirable behavior. And we want to avoid providing attention for those things we don't want to happen in the future. So questioning is one way that we are responding to undesirable behavior in an unhelpful way. Arguing. I think this one is especially important. As Lisa talked about, we're going into the holidays, we're going to see family. Arguing with your Uncle Bud is not the thing that's going to finally change his mind this time. We're generally pretty good about it. We know we should avoid topics like politics and religion because you might start an argument. An argument is really just that back and forth that we're trying to convince someone to change their mind, to see it our way. except we're really focused on our differences when we're arguing like this. So again, this is another thing that we're doing that isn't helping people and is probably really hurting our relationships as well. Sarcasm and teasing. So saying the opposite of what you mean or making a joke. It is always at someone's expense. I didn't really realize this until I started teaching tools. So I'm a big The Office fan, and Michael Scott is usually making some kind of joke. And one of my favorite ones used to be, "That's what she said." And then I realized that, in fact, that also is at someone's expense, typically the she in that case. And so it ruined that joke, ruined most of sarcasm for me, this realizing how coercive it is. And when I think about the population of people that most of us are caring for here, it's a really high level social skill to use sarcasm or teasing. There's a lot of nuance there and understanding, that someone is saying something that isn't really what they mean. And we have the opportunity to model, and when we use sarcasm and teasing, we're really modeling a skill that most people can't access. They can't use it in the same way. And so not everybody's in on it. I would pretty much also lump like inside jokes between you as part of this as well, that we should really avoid it, especially because the nuance of that skill is difficult to implement. And so we're really not modeling the behavior that we want to see. Force, verbal and physical. This one's probably pretty obvious of something that we want to avoid. Making others do something that they may not want to do. And it's often against their will, and I think that's really important. So not only can people physically get injured when we use force, we're also taking away that person's autonomy and their ability to make decisions for themselves, which I think is really difficult. And we should try to avoid that. So this one is one that most people are probably already really trying to avoid doing. The next one is threats. And this is reminding someone that whatever they're doing is going to lead to some kind of bad event happening for them. So I put a couple of examples down here. So, if you keep doing that, you're not going to get to have dessert. There's a threat. Oh, I need dessert. Or, counting like 1, 2, I over here am threatening about something is going to happen when we get to number 3, right? So these are all examples of threats that we're using to try to get somebody to stop that behavior in the moment. But what we're really doing is damaging our relationship. And we're, again, really focusing on the undesirable behavior versus focusing on the things that we want to see more of in the future. I saw a chat box come from Lisa about being guilty of this. I just want to say again, like, we're all guilty of doing these. It's the way that we were raised, most likely. I can think of many times when my very great parents used many of these forms of coercion. I am parenting 2 children myself, and I know that I'm guilty of these. We're all guilty. And I'm going to talk about the first thing we should really do, which is just identify that you're doing this. Just know when you're doing it. So this is one that I also find myself really trying to avoid with my preschooler. Criticism, telling someone you don't like how they're doing something. This is one I'm really trying to avoid using with my spouse. This is, you're missing the speck on the floor. There's still dirt over there in that corner. Hey, it's better if when you're washing this, if you could, rub it this way. If they've already started the task, it's really too late to provide that kind of coaching as you might be thinking about it. You're trying to help the situation, but in fact, it can really make that person feel like they didn't know how to do it in the first place. They can be less confident after they're hearing the portions of things that they're not getting accurate. So if you want to tell them how to, sweep the floor in a more efficient manner, make a mental note for yourself and say, wow, this didn't go well when they swept the floor today. next time before they start, I'm going to give them that tip. I'm going to give them those instructions about how I think they could do that better. Do it next time. So then we're not doing it in the moment and we haven't ruined all of the effort that they've put in so far. Despair is our next one. So saying or acting as if, you've given up. Oh, I guess we're not making it to school today, or fine. I guess we won't be doing this. Just when we're hopeless, we've made it so that whoever we're trying to help or care for is also probably going to go down that road of hopelessness. If I can't even hold it together, what hope do they have of being able to when they needed my help too? And as I was typing out this slide, when I was trying to find my examples of fine and ugh, I also thought about teenagers and how I probably did that to my parents like 5 million times of like, fine, okay. And what I was trying to communicate to them was, I don't like the answer that you're giving me. I'm hopeless that you'll change your mind. And nothing really changed for them, except knowing that they had disappointed me in some kind of way. And that's what this is doing. It's telling the person that you don't like it. It's really unlikely to change their behavior. It's just going to make them feel bad, versus changing the behavior in the long run. So holding in our feelings and making sure that we are not telling people that they've disappointed us in some kind of way. That's going to help make them be less confident and less likely to make good decisions. Lecture and logic. This is the Charlie Brown wah, 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 wah. When we start talking too much, people tune us out. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, here I am just like talking at you. So please keep listening to me. I know that when one person just keeps talking and it might be, you need to do this, you need to do this, it can become too much for that listener. And this again, I think is one that maybe you really did have something that you needed to educate or teach about, and it might be a timing problem. So if somebody's already started a task, that lecture, that extra information can turn into a lecture the same way that it can turn into criticism. And you might have noticed by now that some of these examples, really one form of coercion is really very similar to another depending on the context of that situation. So taking away, removing somebody's, taking away their iPad, taking away the TV time, taking away, whatever the toy is in the moment that's causing the problem, sending somebody to timeout or grounding them. These are all ways that we're trying to get the behavior to stop in the moment, but they're probably creating long-term problems for us. And that's really the case of all of these coercions. The reason we keep using them is because they work in the moment, as in that behavior might stop. And we're likely to see that behavior happen again. It's not changing the behavior in the long term. It's really just stopping it in the moment. Versus really changing that in the long run, which is probably what we really want. You want it to be better in the long run. And so tools is as a whole, tools is really asking you to take the long game and avoid these things in the moment and use the other skills to replace them. So taking away things, Lisa ratted herself out about the one she's really guilty of. I have been guilty of this, and I still think about when I took away my son's trash truck toy that he rammed it into the wall. And so then I had to think about, okay, how am I going to reintroduce this toy? He gets to have his toy back. How am I going to reintroduce it so that it's not running into the wall next time? And if it does run into the wall next time, how is he gonna, then he wouldn't keep earning this toy, right? And so before I brought the toy back again, I used the tool I mentioned earlier called set expectations. And so I think that's another important part of all of these coercions. I'm telling you a bunch of stuff not to do, and I'm not really helping you with the what do you do instead. And so what do you do instead is really all of these other proactive preventative tools, like the stay close tool that I mentioned, using positive consequences when you're seeing desirable behavior, and setting expectations before they have the opportunity to do it wrong. So, I gave my kid a giant, heavy garbage truck without telling him, here are the expectations. This can hurt the wall. We're going to stay away from it. And then I ended up taking it away because he didn't meet my expectations that I never communicated. So again, I apologize right now for telling you all the things not to do. And I encourage you to come to tools and consider the other skills that we can be using instead. And the last of my 10 here is talking about bad behavior in front of the person. And I put bad in quotation marks because really just talking about a behavior that you want someone to do differently next time in front of them is pretty disrespectful. And the example that I gave here is, do you know what your kid did today? So, mom comes home and you start sharing, the bad thing that happened in the day right in front of that person is really defeating. And again, going back to the point I think we've made a couple of times, which is we're also really focusing on the thing we don't want to happen instead of focusing on the positive. And Tools of Choice is really all about switching your frame of mind to focus on that positive and increase the positives, that the potential for positives to be happening. That's what gets attention in our positive environments, good, desirable behavior that we want to see more of. Okay, so I gave you our 10 examples of coercion, and I want to talk about why we know it's so important to avoid these. Several things happen when people experience coercion. One is avoidance. So this is something that happens in the long term. You avoid that person. Ooh, the last several times I talked to Pops, man, he was really grilling me on politics, and I can't do that today. Guess who I'm not going to call? I'm not going to call Pops. I can't talk about it today, right? So if your relationship becomes these repeated experiences of coercion, you really just don't want to be around that person anymore, and you start to avoid them. So that's kind of a long-term effect of coercion within a relationship is avoidance. Another effect that's long-term and immediate is getting even. So coercion meets coercion, and it might be two different types of coercion. I started with a question, why'd you do that? And then I get an answer and I give an answer, and now we're arguing, right? So the idea that when I'm coercive towards someone, I am more likely to get that back. And it might not be the same form of coercion, but I am likely to receive coercion back. So that back and forth of getting even is a common effect, as well as escape. So I just can't handle this. I have to leave right now. I have to get out of this situation. There's a lot of ways to escape a situation. And when we use coercion, we are more likely to get that as the response. So we're motivating people to want to get out and escape the environment when we're coercive to them. Another effective coercion, I've mentioned this a couple of times, you have the constant opportunity to be modeling desirable behavior you want to see more of in the future. And when we use coercion, we're actually modeling behavior we don't want to see in the future, and that we don't want to be reenacted by the other person. So when we use coercion, we are teaching coercive behavior, and people are learning that from us. And again, they might not have the social skill to use sarcasm in the moment, but they would have the social skills to use other forms of coercion that we've talked about. And we know that coercion meets coercion. So we're motivating that behavior by using coercion. Additionally, people behave less confidently when they're coerced. And I like to use the example of Seinfeld in the soup episode, where this person, Seinfeld, gets up in front of, thousands of people professionally. This man is like so confident he can make jokes in front of, giant crowds. And yet he wants a bowl of soup and he's like cowering, waiting in line for this bowl of soup because he's afraid that he'll be coerced and they'll take that soup away from him. So when people experience coercion, they are less likely to make good decisions, and they behave less confidently because they're all really kind of a put down. And lastly, coercion is focused on that undesirable behavior. And when you come to tools, you'll learn that we really want to focus on behavior we want to see more of and avoid attending to behavior we don't want to see more of. And so when we're using coercion, we are focused on the undesirable behavior. We are more likely to see it come back at us in the future. So these are the effects of those 10 examples of coercion that I went over, and really why do we want to avoid this? So I've told you a bunch of things not to do. Now, what should you do? First, just identify that you're being coercive. Just recognizing can help. So there are several reasons that we're more likely to be coercive. I put a few on here. So halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Some people say hangry. Maybe you're being encountered with your pet peeves. You walked in the house and every cabinet is open. That's a pet peeve of yours. You're more likely to be coercive. Things aren't going well for you. Maybe you're experiencing coercion. It's also just what we've practiced. It's a habit, these types of responses. So the first thing to do, identify that you're doing it. And the next thing, give yourself some empathy. Our whole society is coercive. Maybe you're hungry, you're lonely, you're angry, you're tired. Give yourself some empathy. There's a reason you are coercive. It's tough, and you can do something different. So stop and try something else, like empathy. Hey, bud, I can tell you're having a hard time. And then get support is my last suggestion. And here are some ways you can get support. You could come to our Tools of Choice class. This is a different QR code. This is actually the QR code that you can take to go to the registration. The first one was to more information about Tools of Choice. This one is come and come to our sessions and practice with us. Here's the QR code to register. I'm going to leave that up for just a moment before I go to my next slide, which is a link for you to use to attend a family coaching workshop, which are just an evening opportunity that's much more flexible than the Tools of Choice and really geared towards families, family caregivers. And I'm going to navigate there in just a moment. Okay, so this is the last slide that I have for you. This is the link to the family coaching workshops. You do not have to register for these. Just come and show up. And in the chat box, I also included a link to a podcast series. They're very short snippets about each of the forms of coercion that we talked about today. And those are just a little bit longer and offer more information about if this is the coercion that you're really using a lot of, like questioning, that's the coercion that you're really using a lot of. It has some specific suggestions about what you might do instead. So that's a great resource as well. And I have 2 minutes. I'm going to check the chat box to see if there's any questions, and I'm happy to take any, folks. Feel free to add them.
I didn't see any that have come in thus far, but boy, I'm telling you, I am thinking of so many scenarios, Kathleen, and every time I talk to you, I come up with more ideas of, oops, yep, I can see where I was doing that. And, even responding to somebody with body language. If they're doing something and you're rolling your eyes or you're turning your head or, simple things like that could even also be coercive and cause more behavior. So just being aware of those, and had conversations with some folks one time about, you get up in the morning, you might be on the wrong side of the bed, and how much difference it is when somebody says, hey, I see you're having a bad day. Is everything okay? Or we want to talk about it, as opposed to, my, what is your problem? Right? So it just,
yes,
being aware. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And I think, what you did there was the first thing you did was just empathy. So, if someone's having some kind of feelings, just telling them that I see how you're feeling, that's a game changer. And one of the first skills that you'll learn when you come see us in Tools class. I got one question private chatted about in-person workshops. We don't have any scheduled right now. And in 2023, we are going to have a quarterly opportunity for folks to come and do these in person. Right now, they are all live on WebEx. And in 2023, we'll have some opportunities around the state for folks to come in person. We know those are important for families.
Yeah, sounds exciting. And I love that you're expanding the opportunities.
I don't see any more questions, Lisa. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, because the information is good. And I was sitting here thinking, maybe instead of talking politics at Thanksgiving table, I'm going to pull this webinar up and we're just all going to watch it together. So anyway.
I might institute that at my house too. Maybe I should rewatch it before we start the meal.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not seeing any more questions, but I'm seeing some comments that the information was good, an eye opener, motivation, and to do personal change. So, and that's exactly what being aware of how you're responding to folks. That's part of it. The first step is being aware. I have been aware of several different things that I've been doing wrong. So it's good information. If you'll flip through the slides, we have the next date for the next webinar. There we go. We are moving this one up to December 20th to work around the Christmas holiday. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you found the information to be helpful as I did. And it's always good to talk to you, Kathleen. I appreciate what you share. Thank you all very much. Bye.